I was starving when I stole bread to save my dying grandmother. But the man who caught me wasn't a store owner. He was the city's most dangerous Mafia don, and he'd been hunting me for weeks. When I woke up with a wedding ring on my finger and falsified marriage documents bearing my signature, I realized this was never about the bread at all. But what does a ruthless killer want with a nobody waitress like me? And why does he keep whispering about the grandfather I never knew existed? The fluorescent lights in Gino's market buzzed overhead as I slipped the warm loaf of bread under my worn jacket. My hands shook as I pressed it against my ribs. 3 days without food made my stomach twist with sharp pain. Grandmother needed her heart medicine more than we needed meals. I moved toward the door, counting each step. 1, 2, 3. Almost there. Miss. The deep voice froze my blood. You forgot to pay. I turned slowly. A man in an expensive black suit stood 10 feet away. He was tall, maybe 6'2", with dark hair slicked back perfectly. His brown eyes looked like they could see straight through my soul. Gold rings caught the light on his fingers. I don't know what you mean, I whispered. Vincent Torino smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. I didn't know then that he had been watching me for 3 weeks. Every Tuesday when I bought my grandmother's medicine, every Friday when I worked late at the diner, and every Sunday when I visited the old cemetery where I didn't know his mentor Antonio Rossi was buried. I had no idea who my grandfather really was. The bread under your jacket, he said quietly. It's still warm. My face burned red. Please, my grandmother is sick. I'll pay you back, I swear. Vincent stepped closer. His cologne smelled like expensive tobacco and danger. What's your name? Elena. The word came out like a breath. Elena Rossi? My green eyes went wide. How did he know my last name? I nodded slowly. Vincent pulled out his phone and showed me a photo. It was me, walking into this same market yesterday. Then another photo of me at work. Then one of my apartment building. You've been watching me, I gasped. For weeks, he admitted. His voice was calm, like we were talking about the weather. Your grandfather was very important to me. You look just like him. My grandfather died before I was born. Antonio Rossi was my teacher, my friend. Vincent's hand moved to his jacket pocket. He left you something very valuable. But first, we need to talk. I backed toward the door. I don't want anything. I just need to go home. I'm afraid that's not possible anymore. Vincent pulled out a thick envelope. Inside were papers with official seals and signatures, marriage certificates, photos of us together that I didn't remember taking. Congratulations, Mrs. Torino. You're my wife now. The bread fell from my jacket and hit the floor with a soft thud. The fluorescent lights buzzed louder, and Vincent Torino's smile finally reached his cold, calculating eyes. I woke up in a bed that wasn't mine, silk sheets the color of blood wrapped around my legs. The room was 3 times bigger than my entire apartment, with marble floors that felt cold under my bare feet. Heavy curtains blocked out all sunlight. A wedding ring sat on my finger like a chain. The door was locked from the outside. Footsteps echoed in the hallway beyond my prison. Men's voices spoke in Italian, their words sharp and angry. I pressed my ear to the door and caught fragments. Kill him. Too much money. The docks at midnight. When Vincent finally came to get me, he wore a different suit. This one was gray, perfectly pressed. No blood on it, but I could smell violence on his skin like expensive aftershave. Time for dinner, he said simply. The dining room table stretched 15 feet long. Crystal glasses caught the light from a chandelier that probably cost more than I made in a year. Vincent sat at the head like a king. His family filled the other chairs. Marco, Vincent's younger brother, had wild eyes and scars on his knuckles. He stared at me like I was a piece of meat. She doesn't belong here, he said, cutting his steak with quick, violent motions. Sophia, Marco's wife, reached over and touched my hand. Her fingers were warm and soft. "Don't mind him. He's protective of family." But I saw how her eyes moved to Vincent, then back to me, like she was taking notes. "Eat," Vincent commanded. My fork shook as I lifted it. The food tasted like ash in my mouth. When I tried to stand and leave, 2 guards appeared from nowhere. They were both over 6 feet tall with guns under their jackets. "Sit down, wife," Vincent said. The word wife sounded like a threat. Later, Sophia found me crying in the bathroom. "Poor thing," she whispered, handing me tissues. "Vincent can be harsh, but he protects what's his. You're safe here." I wanted to believe her. Sophia was the only person who showed me kindness in this house of shadows and secrets. The next week, a police detective approached me at the market during my one supervised trip outside. James Morrison had kind blue eyes and a gentle voice. He slipped me a business card when the guards weren't watching. "I'm undercover FBI," he whispered. "I can protect you, get you out of this life." I hid the card in my bra, right over my racing heart. Morrison promised freedom, but when Vincent touched my shoulder later that night, checking a bruise from my latest escape attempt, his hands were surprisingly gentle. "Your grandfather would want you safe," he murmured. I didn't know who to trust. The detective who promised escape, or the monster who spoke of my family with love in his dangerous eyes. The charity gala sparkled with 1,000 lights. Women wore dresses that cost more than cars, and men discussed business deals worth millions. I stood in an emerald green gown that Vincent had chosen, feeling like a doll dressed up for display. I couldn't take it anymore. "Ladies and gentlemen," my voice cut through the music as I grabbed the microphone from the surprised singer. "I want you all to meet my husband, Vincent Torino. He kidnapped me, forced me to marry him. I'm his prisoner." The crowd gasped. Champagne glasses stopped halfway to painted lips. Vincent's jaw went tight as stone, but he moved toward me with calm, deadly steps. "Elena," he said quietly, "come here." "No." I backed away from him, my heels clicking on marble floors. "I won't be your captive anymore." Vincent reached me in 3 long strides, his hand wrapped around my wrist, pulling me against his chest. The crowd watched like this was theater, not real life. "You belong to me," he whispered against my ear, his breath warm on my skin. Then his lips crashed against mine in a kiss that claimed and conquered. It was possessive, demanding, and it made my knees weak despite my anger. When he pulled away, his eyes burned into mine. "Mowgli Mia, my wife. Fighting me will only bring pain to everyone you love." The crowd clapped like they had just seen a romantic movie. My face burned red with shame and something else I didn't want to name. The next morning, I woke up alone. The house felt too quiet. No guards by my door. No Vincent checking on me like he always did. I found a note on my pillow. "Your freedom, as requested. V." But freedom felt wrong. Empty. I never made it to the cab waiting outside. Strong hands grabbed me from behind, pressing a cloth over my mouth. The smell was sweet and chemical. My legs gave out as the world went black. I woke up in a basement that smelled like mold and fear. Detective Morrison stood over me, but his kind eyes were gone. Now they looked cold and hungry. "Sorry about this, sweetheart," he said, lighting a cigarette, "but the Castellano family pays better than the FBI ever did." My wrists were tied to a metal chair. My shoulders already ached. Morrison's partner, a thin man with yellow teeth, sharpened a knife on a leather strap. "Where does Vincent keep your grandfather's money?" Morrison asked. "I don't know what you're talking about," I whispered. The thin man moved closer with his knife. "We have all night to help you remember." I closed my eyes and prayed Vincent would find me before these men carved the answers from my skin. The basement door exploded off its hinges. Vincent moved through the smoke like death in an expensive suit. His gun fired 3 times. Morrison dropped first, then his partner. The thin man with the knife didn't even have time to scream. I had never seen Vincent kill before. It was fast, clean, and terrible. When he cut me free from the chair, his hands shook as they touched my bloody wrists. "I'm sorry," he whispered in Italian. "I'm so sorry, amore mia." I should have been afraid. Instead, I pulled his face down to mine and kissed him hard. "Take me home." But home was under attack. Don Salvatore Castellano stood on Vincent's front lawn with 20 armed men. The old man's white hair gleamed in the moonlight. His voice carried across the distance like poison. "The Rossi blood belongs to my family," he shouted. "Antonio promised his granddaughter to my grandson before he died. She's mine by right." Gunfire erupted from every window. I crouched behind Vincent's desk as bullets shattered expensive paintings on the walls. Vincent moved between his men, calm and deadly, giving orders that kept them alive. "There's a tunnel," my grandmother said from the doorway. I gasped. The old woman stood straighter than she had in years, holding an antique pistol like she knew how to use it. "Your grandfather built it during the war. He left things down there. Important things." I followed my grandmother into the basement through a hidden door behind the wine racks. The tunnel was narrow and dark, filled with wooden boxes that smelled like gun oil and old paper. Inside the boxes were documents, bank records, and photographs of my parents' car accident that wasn't an accident at all. Salvatore Castellano's signature was on the order. "He killed them," I whispered. "And now he wants to kill you too," my grandmother said. "Unless we kill him first." I grabbed my grandfather's pistol from the box. It was heavier than I expected. The metal was cold against my palm. I found Salvatore in Vincent's study, standing over Vincent's bleeding body. The old man smiled when he saw me. "Come to surrender, little girl?" I raised the gun. My hands didn't shake. "I came to end this." The bullet took Salvatore in the chest. He looked surprised as he fell, like he never expected a Rossi woman to fight back. 6 months later, I sat beside Vincent during a family meeting. His hand rested on my growing belly. I wore black silk and red lipstick. When I spoke, men twice my age listened. "You made me into a monster," I told Vincent later in the quiet of our bedroom. "You made me human," he replied, and kissed me like I was his salvation.